Well, that was a movie. What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Will, and I'm here to do my quick review for Xmen Dark Phoenix, which was a movie. Now, I'm a few weeks late since this came out, and I know, before I even went into it, I know this was not getting a lot of stellar reviews. It was actually not really doing so hot, but I wanted to catch up on it since I've got some free time, and yeah, I saw it. I will do this a little differently because honestly, there's certain parts of the movie that I do want to spoil in order to get my point across. So the first portion of this review is just going to be non-spoiler, and then I will throw up a spoiler tag just for the few minutes that I need to mention something that was a spoiler. So with that in mind, let's get started. Overall, I will say this. It is not the worst X-Men movie. By a huge margin, this is not the worst. This is also not a good movie. Just put that one out there too. I'll start with what I liked about the movie. I do love the actors that they have for the movie. I pretty much, every single one of them knocked it out of the park with what they had to work with, which really kind of makes me more disappointed that this is the last one, but kind of thankful it's the last one because this does kind of go out on a whimper. The action in the movie is actually pretty good too. I actually like some of the special effects and the use of the actual Phoenix Force that Jean is using in the movie. Also, Sophie Turner, hats off to her. She really gave a really good performance as Jean, even though one of my biggest gripes is that they were introduced just in the previous movie and then we're already in this situation where they're going against each other, which was a definite negative for me for this movie. If I was just to give someone a brief, like, thumbs up, thumbs down, if you look at this as just a standalone movie with no previous baggage, it's an okay movie. It's not bad. The acting and some of the directional choices are very questionable, but overall the performances are really good. But this movie starts to turn on a sour note for myself when I stop and think about any of the other movies in the franchise that are supposed to be linked to this. I have said this on numerous occasions. X-Men First Class is my favorite X-Men movie. Hands down. I think it was a really smart move to reboot it. And in recent interviews with Matthew Vaughn, the original director, he's even said that his original trilogy wasn't going to do Days of Future Past until last. They were going to do a different movie in between, probably something like Apocalypse, where you introduce Jean, Cyclops, Nightcrawler, those characters, you bring them in, and then you get to know them, and then you can do something like Days of Future Past or Dark Phoenix, which even that, it's very loosely based on the Dark Phoenix comic, like the previous one, which it doesn't bode well when the writer and the director for this movie is the writer for X3, which is to me the worst one, along with X-Men Origins Wolverine. So this is not as bad as those two, but it doesn't bode well. And this is a first-time director, too, in Simon Kinberg. And it shows. It does. The writing, the direction. There are certain elements of this movie that really bothered me. Most notably, some of the character shifts because of the inciting incident that caused a character or two to act completely, in my opinion, out of character. Not from a comic book standpoint, but just from a previous movie standpoint, just completely out of character. And then there's even another 180 towards the final act when they start acting like how they should have been acting. And it was very confusing. And with no context, I'm just going to pose this question and comment down below if you've seen the movie. Is Nightcrawler bipolar? Because he does something in this movie that, from his character that we were introduced to, it's just like everyone was on, like, cranked up to 11 in terms of rage and anger, and everybody was just like, even Professor X was very much, for me, a little bit out of character. I understand why the movie did it in order to cause the rift, but if that was what you were going for, and to me, he felt more like the villain of the movie because of choices he made, but there's a villain in the movie that is kind of pointless to have in the movie. The deaths in the movie are kind of telegraphs. If you've watched any of the trailers, they don't hide it. Yeah, it's very disappointing when you think about where this fits in with the rest of the other movies that came before it. If you watch it just as its own movie, it's fine. But then it's when you think about, well, wait a second, this is very out of character. And don't get me started on the decade hopping this new rebooted quadrilogy has been doing, where X-Men First Class was in the 60s, then Days of Future Past was in the 70s, and then X-Men Apocalypse was in the 80s, and this takes place in the early 90s. It's like, why are you jumping 10 years? I feel like the movie itself was always going to be hindered because of how every movie after First Class had this weird thing where it had to jump 10 years, and it made everything feel discombobulated. And I get it. Most of the X-Men films have never been big on continuity, but if it's hard to care about certain events that happen in the movie when you haven't had a chance to rather connect with the characters or the character that they're trying to make the emotional crutch of the entire movie. That person checked out 2 movies ago. So it's hard to really be invested in their marketing for this is the finale of the X-Men saga at Fox, because it is. And I think this movie was in production before the Disney Fox merger even went through. So they had they were trying to pull an end game, and it just didn't. It kind of fell flat for myself. Overall, I didn't hate the movie, and that's probably the glowing praise you can give it, is I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it. And for a movie that's supposed to be the finale for some of these really good actors, it just felt like it felt more like a dud, and it did. And it's not as bad as people make it out to be. Let me get that out the way as well. It's not a terrible movie. It's just, if you're not super connected to it and you just want to see kind of a flashy movie, it's not bad. But if you're connected to any of these characters, or however much connected, it kind of feels like not a great finale for it. So that's non-spoiler. Real quick, the thing I'm talking about is, and this is spoilers, so the spoiler tag should be right around here or down here. I don't know. I'll put it someplace. But spoilers for a few minutes. So my biggest issue with the movie was that Mystique is the emotional crutch of the movie. And if you've paid attention to how they've treated her character over the previous 3 movies, she has been like the forefront of all the movies. If you remember how Mystique was in X-Men First Class with the makeup and everything, how it was a lot of makeup, up till now where it looks like, unfortunately Jennifer Lawrence just wasn't really into it, but I guess she was contractually obligated to do it. You can tell that they put less effort into her makeup, and her performance just slowly became almost like how Bruce Willis is when you watch any of his movies anymore. If he doesn't care, it's kind of like it felt more like she's just trying to do it to get it done. And that's why they killed her off very early. She was the inciting incident, and it caused a major shift in how Beast was acting, to the point where he was ready to murder Jean. But I'm like, okay, wait, calm down. First off, I'm like, you just want to straight up murder, to the point where they're fighting in the middle of the street in New York, causing this huge scene. And not to mention that the movie starts off with them completely beloved, and like the X-Men are like praised and everything like that. So there's the issue with the 10-year jumping is that there's all this stuff that was built up from the end of Apocalypse, where they were still hated and still slightly hunted, to, we're the team that the president calls on to save people at the space station. I'm like, where did that come from? Sorry, excuse my language, but where did that come from? So the 10-year hopping and putting all the emotional crux on people caring about Mystique's character throughout the previous 3 movies, her death fell flat. So everyone responding so dramatically, and also Charles Xavier's, like, at the start of the movie, he's kind of, his ego has been blown up, and he's like, oh, I'm doing this thing, my dream is coming true, and it's just like, what is that, like, dude, what are you doing? And like, to the point where you're risking people's lives, and then you're losing the trust of your students, and everything like that. It's just, that was some of the out of character stuff that made the movie feel, it pulled me out of the movie for a minute. And that was like, I had to kind of spoil that section in order to talk about it. But those sort of out of character moments, and then the fact that immediately after their huge fight with each other in the middle of the street, and the alien presence that was trying to manipulate Jean throughout the entire movie, which that was the other thing. Jean, as much as I praise Sophie Turner's performance, I felt that they did a disservice to her character because she was never really in control, and because we only had one movie to introduce us to her, it felt so disjointed when she's being manipulated by multiple people to the point where it's like, she's not really the bad guy like they make everything out to be. And even the bad guy they inserted into the movie was completely pointless. You could have made her the bad guy, or made the Phoenix Force the bad guy, and actually make that what was causing her to go mad. It really didn't seem like that's what it was. It hinted at it, but then you have Jessica Chastain's character who plays the villain, who we're never given a name or anything like that. She gives like basic exposition to the point where it's like this force has this, traveled the universe and destroyed planets and could never be controlled until it came to you, and we're trying to control it. She literally said, I'm the bad guy, and Jean follows her. It's like, Jean, I thought you were smart. What's going on here? So, okay, so spoilers are done. So overall, I just had to get that out real fast. Overall, X-Men Dark Phoenix is a very kind of lackluster finale to a trilogy or a series of movies, since it was rebooted, that had a really strong start with X-Men First Class and even with Days of Future Past, and then the last 2 movies have just kind of dropped a ball. For myself, I find enjoyment within each movie. I do. So if you go see the movie and you find enjoyment for it, fantastic. I enjoyed parts, but only when I didn't think about it. If I just watched it and took it for what it is, that's fine, and you should do that with movies in general. But when it's something like this, a part of a franchise where it has elements that you want to have investment in these characters, because there was a lot of little scenes in this movie that pointed out, we're the last of the First Class. We've known each other for decades and never have aged. So there's all these different elements that they want you to have invested in the previous movies, but then if you do and you see what they're doing with the characters in this one, it feels so disjointed. But the easiest explanation is that, oh, well, that was 10 years ago. But then you need to show me that stuff. You can't just say it was 10 years ago to have such a dramatic shift and not really give any sort of indication besides a quick, like, you can't do a major character shifting personality at the beginning of a movie from a previous movie without some sort of context or some sort of decline or something like that. That's why I think the biggest hindrance to the entire franchise was after First Class. You decided to jump 10 years every single time. But I can't hold the movie responsible for that, but I have to judge a movie based off of what they gave me. So, X-Men Dark Phoenix. Have you seen it? If you saw it, if you liked it, let me know what were some of your favorite parts. If you didn't like it, tell me what some of the things that might have bothered you. Let me know in the comments down below. It's a little disappointing, but, I figured it'd be a good way to rant, I guess. But I wanted to see it, judge for myself. Always judge movies on your own merit. Movies are subjective. You're going to like something that I might not like. I'm going to like stuff that you might not like. That's why we have discussions. So, I do thank you guys for watching this and all my other videos. Like, share, and subscribe. Click on some videos at the end. You follow me on the Twitters. Till next time, catch you later. Hey, thanks so much for watching this video, and you made it all the way to the end. Aren't you special? If you did like this video, if you don't mind, give me a thumbs up on the description. As well, if you click on my face right over here, you can actually subscribe to the channel for more videos. And if you've got a few minutes, why don't you check out a video or two that are floating on the side right here. Later.